There is a liquid that comes out of the ground. It is black, it is thick, it smells terrible. And thousands of years ago, ancient people found it bubbling up from the earth and had no idea what to do with it. But they kept experimenting, they kept trying different things, and slowly they figured out that this strange black liquid could do something extraordinary. What they discovered would eventually change the entire ancient world. The very first people to encounter oil did not go looking for it. It came to them. In certain parts of the ancient world, modern-day Iraq, Iran, Azerbaijan, oil did not stay underground. It seeped up through cracks in the earth. It pooled on the surface of the ground. It floated on top of rivers. It oozed out of rocky hillsides like a slow, black wound. The ancient Sumerians, living in Mesopotamia around 4,000 years ago, called it pitch or bitumen. They had been seeing it their whole lives. Their parents had seen it. Their grandparents had seen it. At first, nobody thought it was fuel. They used it for something else entirely. They waterproofed their boats with it. They used it like glue to hold bricks together. They patched cracks in baskets and clay pots with it. It was basically ancient cement. Useful, but nobody was burning it yet. So how did they figure out it could produce light and heat? That discovery, the one that changed everything, did not come from Mesopotamia. It came from somewhere else entirely. The first people who deliberately used oil as fuel were the ancient Persians and the people of the Caucasus region, the area around what is now Azerbaijan, roughly 2,500 to 3,000 years ago. Here is how it probably happened. Oil seeps near the surface would sometimes catch fire on their own. A lightning strike, a stray ember from a campfire. Suddenly the ground itself was on fire, burning for hours, sometimes for days. The ancient people who saw this were not confused. They were terrified. Some groups of people began to worship these eternal flames. In Azerbaijan, a place called Yanardağ, which means burning mountain, had a hillside where natural gas and oil seeped through the ground and burned continuously for hundreds of years without stopping. People came from far away just to see it. Priests built temples next to it. The eternal flame became sacred, but some people were not just worshipping it. They were watching it, studying it, asking a question that changed everything. If the ground can burn, can we make it burn somewhere else? The answer was yes. Ancient people in the Middle East and Central Asia began collecting the oil that seeped out of the ground and putting it in small clay dishes. They placed a twisted piece of plant fiber, something like a thick thread, into the oil. They lit it. It burned. Not as clean as wood. It smoked a lot. It smelled bad, but it burned longer, and it burned brighter than most things they had tried before. This was the ancient oil lamp. It sounds simple, but think about what this meant. Before this, when the sun went down, life mostly stopped. You had fire, yes, but fire takes wood. Wood is heavy. Wood runs out, and fire is dangerous inside a small tent or a room. A lamp is different. A lamp is small, controllable. You can carry it. You can set it in a corner, and it stays there. Suddenly, people could work after dark, could read, or rather, could look at drawings and carvings after dark, could move around inside their homes safely after dark. Oil did not just produce light, it extended the day. But the story does not stop there, because one group of people took oil further than anyone else had before, and what they did with it, nobody expected. While people in the Middle East were using surface oil, the ancient Chinese were doing something far more ambitious. They were digging for it. As early as 2,000 years ago, during the Han Dynasty, Chinese workers were drilling wells into the ground to reach oil and natural gas trapped deep below the surface. They used long bamboo poles with iron drill bits attached to the end. They would pound the drill into the ground, pull it out, pour out the debris, and pound it in again, over and over. Some of these wells went down more than 100 meters deep. This was not simple work. It was dangerous. The ground could collapse. Gas pockets could explode without warning. Workers died. But they kept going, because what they were pulling out of the ground was incredibly useful. They burned the natural gas directly, piping it through bamboo tubes to heat large iron pans where they boiled salt water to extract salt. Oil and salt production running side by side thousands of years ago. They called the oil burning water, because to them, the idea that water could burn was exactly that strange. Now, the Middle East had lamps, China had wells, but there was one more use for oil that nobody has mentioned yet, one that ancient armies discovered, and it was not peaceful at all. War changed when armies figured out that oil burns, and that burning oil is almost impossible to put out. The ancient Persians were among the first to use oil in battle. Around 480 BC, Persian soldiers would dip arrows in oil, light them on fire, and shoot them at enemy ships and wooden fortifications. Flaming arrows were not new, but oil-soaked arrows burned hotter and longer than cloth or dry grass. Then came something even more terrifying. The Byzantine Empire, around 672 AD, developed what ancient sources called Greek fire. The exact formula has been lost to history. Nobody knows exactly what was in it, but it behaved like nothing anyone had seen before. It burned on top of water. It could not be put out with water. It stuck to ships, to wood, to skin. Enemy sailors who tried to put it out by throwing water on it only made it worse. The Byzantines used it to defend their capital, Constantinople, multiple times. Enemy fleets that tried to attack by sea were met with this burning liquid sprayed from tubes on Byzantine ships. The results were devastating. Entire enemy fleets burned to the waterline. Greek fire became one of the most feared weapons of the ancient world. Other empires spent decades trying to figure out the formula. None of them could replicate it exactly. The secret ingredient was almost certainly some form of refined petroleum, oil from the ground, processed in a way that made it stick and burn like nothing else. Ancient people had taken something that seeped quietly out of the ground and turned it into one of the most destructive forces on earth. But there is one last part of this story, because as powerful as oil was in war, what it did to everyday life in the ancient world was just as remarkable. Beyond weapons and lamps, oil quietly worked its way into nearly every part of ancient life. In ancient Egypt, workers used a thick form of oil and bitumen to help preserve mummies. When archaeologists opened ancient tombs thousands of years later, they found traces of petroleum products used in the wrapping process. In ancient Mesopotamia, doctors used oil as medicine. They rubbed it on skin infections, mixed it with herbs, and applied it to wounds. Ancient medical texts from Babylon list petroleum among their treatments. In ancient Rome, oil seeps in parts of the empire were well known. Roman soldiers stationed near oil-rich regions in the Middle East wrote home about rivers that occasionally caught fire, about ground that smelled strange and burned with no wood. And across the ancient world, from China to Persia to Egypt, oil lamps became the standard way to light homes, temples, and palaces for centuries, all from a black liquid that people once found disgusting and strange. Here is the thing that is easy to forget. Every single person who first picked up that black sticky substance from the ground, every worker who drilled down into the earth with a bamboo pole, every soldier who dipped an arrow into oil and set it alight, none of them had any idea what they were sitting on top of. They were not thinking about fuel for the future. They were solving a problem right in front of them. How do I see in the dark? How do I keep my boat from leaking? How do I win this battle? The ancient world ran on oil for thousands of years, and they figured all of it out. One accident, one experiment, one burning hillside at a time.